As many as 1 in 6 Canadians have had their personal information stolen. That is the eye-popping headline from a massive computer hack at financial giant Capital One. It's potentially one of the world's biggest data breaches, and yet another warning to consumers how exposed they are to cyber theft. Scott is tracking this developing story for us. So, Scott, what do we know about the hack?
Well, they're calling this one of the biggest, if not the biggest, financial hack in Canadian history, affecting 1 out of 6 Canadians, as you pointed out. And this was reported to authorities, the U.S. Justice Department, July 19, but the numbers here go back years as far as what has been accessed. But take a look at this total number here. 106 million customers affected. This is in North America, including 6 million Canadians directly. So that puts it in the category of the biggest yet. And 1 million Canadian social insurance numbers are potentially compromised. And that is, you could say, the holy grail of really private information. And so with that, also lots of valuable information in addition to social insurance numbers that gives hackers and criminals the ability to build fake identities. For example, dates of birth, contact information, addresses and phone numbers, payment histories, bank balances, all that could have been held into the hands of hackers. Here's one cybersecurity expert outlines how thieves can basically use this information to build identities.
If it falls in the wrong hands, this information can obviously be used to apply for credit cards, but also for loans and mortgages and anything else that involves the impersonation of victims.
And so impersonation victims, students potentially are vulnerable to this. There's a lot of Capital One in Frosh kits, for example. It's a popular credit card. And what's interesting as well is a lot of people, you didn't even have to be a customer of Capital One. You could have just put your application in for a credit card and you could be vulnerable for this attack. So far, there is one person, a Seattle hacker, a software engineer, is in prison for this, and she could be facing up to 5 years in prison. But a very serious offense, not just in the U.S., but the biggest in Canada.
Yeah, certainly is. Very unsettling. So what is Capital One's response to all of this? Like
anyone would, they want to get out in front of this story to make it look like they are in control of the situation and responding appropriately. Here's another statement from the CEO of Capital One saying, safeguarding applicant and customer information is essential to our mission and our role as a financial institution. We have invested heavily in cybersecurity and will continue to do so. We will incorporate the learnings from this incident to further strengthen our cyber defenses. And so Capital One also saying that they're going to get in touch with affected customers. They're going to offer free credit monitoring and identity protection. No word on how long that might last. If it follows Desjardins, for example, when they had a compromise of 2.7 million customers, they offered a lifetime coverage of that sort of thing. So lots of questions with this. And as well, you know, just very generally, how much information these big financial institutions have on your information, my information, and everyone else out there.
And how well they're keeping it. Thanks so much, Scott.
Thank you.
Claudio Popa heads the data security firm Data Risk Canada, and he is the author of the Canadian Cyber Fraud Handbooks. He is in Markham, Ontario this morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now, the data of 6 million people in Canada compromised. So how significant was this attack?
Well, this is massive. This is actually unprecedented in Canada. We thought that the Desjardins breach of last month was massive at 2.7 million. 6 million Canadians is larger than the Desjardins breach, the Equifax breach, and all others of the past 5 years combined. So this is very, very significant, and also because of the usefulness of the data to cyber criminals.
Now, this breach includes 1 million social insurance numbers belonging to Canadians. So how could that information be abused?
Well, one way that it can be abused is obviously by using it for credit card applications. These were, in fact, credit card applications that were compromised. They were stolen right out of 700 folders at Capital One. Apparently, there was a vulnerability in the setup of their firewall, and a hacker took advantage of this and was able to siphon out this information. So if it falls in the wrong hands, this information can obviously be used to apply for credit cards, but also for loans and mortgages and anything else that involves the impersonation of victims.
All right. Well, Capital One says that at this point, it doesn't look like any of this information has been disseminated, but how do you verify that kind of thing?
Well, that's the tricky bit, because the individual who did take this information said that she intended to disseminate it, and also that she was strapping on a proverbial explosive device in acquiring this information. So she was actually feeling like she was about to self-destruct with all of this data that she was going public with. So who knows what other copies she might have made. We're hoping no other copies were made, but it's very hard to verify. Hopefully the FBI will be able to confirm.
Okay, now if no other copies have been made and the information hasn't been shared, any sense of why the hacker would want to do this?
We don't actually have information on the motive. Clearly, she went public with it. She went online. She bragged about it. She talked about it. She had some stored insecurely, apparently, on a particular website. And so there was a little bit of this information apparently already online that she was misusing, but she didn't indicate whether she wanted to sell it or just disseminate it. So it's a little bit up to anyone's guess at the moment. But the breach did happen back in March. So hopefully the FBI and the company will have sufficient information, and they'll share some of it, at least to appease some of us Canadians.
All right, so it's linked to the breach back in March, but the information that was gathered goes way back. It's credit card information that was gathered back in 2005. Do you think that companies like Capital One are maybe collecting too much information?
Definitely. Over-collection is a massive problem, especially in the financial sector. And of course, the financial sector always says that, they have bank-level security in place. But all it takes is one weak link in the armor. In this particular case, it was a vulnerability in their firewall that allowed access to this treasure trove of 700 folders filled with millions of Canadians' data. So there's no reason to believe that there isn't such not believe that there isn't such information available and vulnerable in the hands of other multinational financial organizations. So it certainly creates a lot of work for the Privacy Commissioner as well as law enforcement in this case.
How's the company responding at this point?
Well, the company had a fairly canned response. As we saw last month with Desjardins, initially they want to assure or reassure potential victims, and then hopefully they will refine their communication to say, hey, you know what, we're not just providing 1 year of credit card monitoring, but we are providing additional monitoring. Again, keep in mind that last month Desjardins made history by offering lifetime coverage for its members, and hopefully Capital One will go the extra mile and not just offer 1 or 2 years of coverage, because the information that was compromised is static information. It's for life, and it can expose Canadians essentially forever. So covering them for just 1 year of credit monitoring is just not going to be enough.
I only have a few seconds left, but a quick tip for Canadians who are concerned about their information.
Any Canadian that's concerned about their information should obviously scan their credit card bill and statement, and also be ready to contact the Capital One as well as the Privacy Commissioner of Canada once further information does come out and once we have a little bit more data to go on. So give them a couple of days, I would say. Potential victims will likely be notified directly at home. So there's no reason to assume that everyone was impacted. The company is required by law to contact potential victims directly. So no reason to panic just yet.
All right, Claudio Popu, thank you so much for joining us today and for your insights as well.
My pleasure.
In Markham, Ontario, Claudio Popa is a cybersecurity expert with Data Risk Canada and the author of the Canadian Cyber Fraud Handbook.